All right, Campbell Soup's down more than 20% over the last couple of years. It is our mystery stock that we told you about. And now Dan Loeb's third point, seeking to replace the entire board of directors. That's right, all 12. And they are all up. CNBC's Leslie Picker has the latest on what is just the beginning of a potentially nasty fight.
Just the beginning, and it could go on for months, David. Shares of Campbell's, though, only up marginally after Third Point revealing its slate of 12 directors seeking to reboot the entire board. It's a rare move for the hedge fund, which hasn't fought in a proxy contest in years. When they nominate directors, though, they've tended to only unseat a few members rather than the whole board. But Loeb says in a letter today that the firm was left with, quote, no choice due to what they call the board's persistent failure to change. It's a bold move and one with a high hurdle. Descendants of Campbell's founder and the voting trust own more than 40% of the shares outstanding. One family member, though, George Strawbridge, is teaming up with Third Point. Together, they own about 8.4%. But mathematically, it's likely that the activists will need to turn at least some of the family members toward their side because it will be difficult to corral such a large portion of those remaining investors to vote their slate, and they need a large portion of those remaining investors. Campbell's confirmed that it received Third Point's nominations and said that it would review the slate. In the meantime, the company will be focused on implementing its own plan, which they say will optimize the company's portfolio, divest certain businesses, and pay down debt, further reduce costs. Lots of stuff going on there, David and Sarah.
The fundamental question is what does he want to do? Because the company is in rough shape, no matter who's on the board, right?
True. And, I think a lot of people would think the playbook would be try and get this thing sold as quickly as possible, but that is not really what I'm hearing. It is much more focused on the belief, at least in the Third Point camp, that this is not a board that can successfully implement and execute on the strategy they've set out. And Loeb does not believe that they should be in a position to pick the next CEO, which will be key. He wants to have this board, of course, that he is recommending do that. And I think a lot of it will end up being the blocking and tackling that they need to do, Sarah. Not necessarily this idea that Kraft Heinz is going to be there and say, okay, we're ready to buy it.
And oftentimes you see these moves by activists where they'll nominate an entire slate to overthrow the entire board in order to bring the company to the negotiating table and let them know that they're serious. And then, between now and the annual meeting or, whatever the certain case may be, they come to some sort of an agreement, some sort of a settlement, and it doesn't necessarily get to that point where they're soliciting votes from shareholders. I'm not saying that's going to be the case here, but that is a common tactic that we tend to see in the activism world.
So the food space is complicated right now, and there's very little growth, if any. That was what the interview with Mondelez is about, which you'll hear later. And so the recipe for these companies has either been spin-off brands, get attacked by an activist, sell yourself, or buy smaller, faster-growing brands, which is something that Campbell has done, and it hasn't seemed to work. It's going to be an uphill battle because now what's left of the new company is they've got a snacks division, which is growing nicely, Snyder's Lance, that's sort of the gem, but they've also got the soup business, which is not growing very well, and a pretty complicated distribution. And whether Loeb succeeds or not, is this going to be an acquisition target? It's a primarily domestic business, which is also not seen as particularly attractive. I'll just bring you some Kraft Heinz CEO comments that are hitting the Reuters tape. There's a big Barclays conference going on right now, I was up in Boston. So he declines to comment on possible Campbell Soup acquisition, says they're still considering M&A deals, which brings up the question, Kraft does have to do a deal, right?
Conceivably, they have to. It's been quite a while. Unilever, of course, is a big fail for them, and many people believe that they would potentially be interested in Campbell, but that does not seem to be the focus. It was not of the board when they deliberated and came up with the plan that they have, and it doesn't seem necessarily to be front and center for Mr. Loeb at this point in terms of what he'd like to see. Maybe you get it done during 19, and then you sell off a much stronger base. But to your point, Leslie, it's an uphill battle for Loeb to a certain extent, just because of the votes. I mean, you need at least 75% of the votes cast, given his ownership and the family's ownership, if you assume they come in somewhere around 35 to 40%. That's an uphill battle. Interesting choice on his part to go here, particularly given what Sarah's talking about, a deteriorating industry.
Right, and a deteriorating stock price. I mean, you'd be selling at a point, even at a premium, let's say it's a standard 20% premium, you'd be looking at a level that they saw just earlier this year. It wouldn't be a premium to where they had historically been trading necessarily. Also, I mean, Loeb has been on the record, or there have been, discussions about him wanting to sell the company. If you're a shareholder, is that what you want to see happen at these prices? It seems like in his letter today, he's taken a step back from that and said, actually, if we take control of the board, a sale may not be the only option for us, but if we don't, then potentially a sale will be the best course of action because I don't trust this management and I don't trust this board.